Hello and welcome. So this is going to be a lore reading. I'm going to see what we've learned by basically picking up a bunch of quests around Kirkwall and doing a little bit of exploring. Let's see. Creatures, nothing about creatures. Items, nothing about items. Places. Lore. Adventures of the Black Fox. Born Lord Remy Vascal in 863 Blessed. The Black Fox was a dashing thief and rogue who went on to inspire so many tales of his exploits that it is nearly impossible to determine today which are true and which are merely fabricated legend. Despite coming from nobility, he has become something of a hero to the common people. His initial exploits involved ridiculing the tyrannical and powerful Lord of Valsheven. I probably mispronounced that. Wearing a mask, he would appear in public and disrupt the Lord's plans, to the point that the Lord angrily put a huge bounty on his life, on the life of this cunning fox, the original nickname which stuck. That the primary bounty hunter who took the job, Carolus, ended up becoming Remy's lifelong partner in crime, only after nearly killing him several times, is one of the most popular tales told in taverns today. The story is often exaggerated to make it appear Remy initially buffoonish until Carolus became so furious at this black fox's inexplicable ability to survive that the cunning Remy gains the upper hand, which impresses Carolus so much the bounty hunter joins him. After years of terrorizing Lord's men and foiling his tax collectors, a favorite pastime of Remy's, according to the Orlesian commoner, Remy was supposedly betrayed by his lover, Servana de Montfort, in some versions of the tale, a mage of the circle no less, and captured. After more than a year of torture, Remy was rescued from the prison by his compatriots, including the repentant Servana. Together they escaped Orlais. In this period of Remy's adventures, he appears almost everywhere in Thedas. As his legend grows, more innkeepers and merchants were happy to claim that the Black Fox had visited their village or establishment and performed some legendary feat. If the tales are to be believed, Remy led the Lord's men on a merry chase. He became embroiled in political intrigue in Navarra, was hunted by the crows of Antiva, then kidnapped by a powerful mage in Tevinter. In each situation, Remy escaped his death at the last moment, foiled the evildoer, and improved the life of the poor and downtrodden. Then inevitably he rejoined his band of adventurers and moved on to the next land. His companions, Carolus and Savannah, the wise dwarf Bolek, the tempestuous knight Ser Clementis, have each spawned their own individual legends over the years. The stories all agree on one point, that at one point the Black Fox disappeared. He and his fellow adventurers voyaged into the heart of the Arlathan forest, seeking the sunken city of the elves, and never returned. Many more of the tales that expand on what ultimately happened to them in the forest and postulate on how they could someday be rescued. From the Adventures of the Black Fox by Gaston Geralt, 911 Dragon. History of the Chantry, Chapter 2. When the prophetess Andraste and her husband Mafrath arrived at the head of their barbarian horde, southern Tevinter was thrown into chaos. The Imperium had defended against invasions in the past, but now they stood without the protection of their gods, with their army in tatters and their country devastated by the blight. Many felt that the timing of the invasion was yet another of the Maker's miracles in Andraste's campaign to spread her divine word. Andraste was more than a simple wife of a warlord after all. She was the betrothed of the Maker, enraptured by the melodic sounds of her voice as she sang to the heavens for guidance. The Maker himself appeared to Andraste and proposed that she come with him, leaving behind the flawed world of humanity. In her wisdom, Andraste pleaded with the Maker to return to his people and create paradise in the world of men. The Maker agreed, but only if all the world would turn away from the worship of the false gods and accept the Maker's divine commandments. Armed with the knowledge of the one true god, Andraste began the exalted march into the weakened Imperium. One of the Maker's commandments, that magic should serve man rather than rule over him, was as honey to the souls of the downtrodden Tevinter who lived under the thumb of the Magisters. Word of Andraste's exalted march Of her miracles and military success spread far and wide. Those in the Imperium who felt the old gods had abandoned them eagerly listened to the words of the Maker. Those throngs of restless citizens that destroyed temples now did so in the name of the Maker and his prophet. At Andraste, as Mafrath's armies conquered the lands of southern Tevinter, so did Andraste's words conquer hearts. It is said that the Maker smiled upon the world, held at the Battle of Valerian Fields, in which the forces of Mafrath challenged and defeated the greatest army Tevinter could muster. The southern reaches of the mighty Imperium now lay at the mercy of the barbarians. Faith in the Maker, bolstered by such miracles, threatened to shake the foundations of the Imperium apart. Of course, the human heart is more powerful than the greatest weapon, and when wounded it is capable of the blackest of deeds. From the tales of the destruction of Thedas by Progenitor TV, Chantry Scholar. Death of a Templar. The dry, dusty earth swallows up salty drops that spatter on its surface. A tiny insect pauses, sensing vibrations, and scurries off, leaving behind its invisible enemy. As the drops fall, the dark circles merge together, expressed in a dark mirror of their creator. The primal emotions of bloodlust and sorrow blend into a lethal cocktail that breaks the strongest of men. The jurisdiction of strength must be left to the spirit, not arm nor chest. Only the wisest turn his inner sanctuary to partition the mind from an all-consuming madness. Seductive voices whisper promise of glory waiting down on the weaker path of the flesh, bringing a death far worse than that of hot lead or steel. I feel like hot lead is specifically refers to bullets. I don't think they would have known that in the medieval world. At least, well, I mean, bullets were a thing, but I don't think the phrase hot lead would have been. I suppose I could be wrong about that, but these blank, hollow promises will echo the unfathomable eternity. Living comfortably amongst material possessions, it is easy to misunderstand the true meaning of uncontrollable hate, failing to understand the power of fighting against pure, unfaltered beliefs, against foes that listen only to their soul. Uncontrollable hate, influenced and thus removed from innocence, the scar is permanent and eternal. The rain, now red, feeds the debt owed for actions past, further seeking further into the earth as the mind draws slower. What was it that drew him himself to this situation? The mind ebbs and parts to a lingering memory of true innocence. He entered war as a newborn enters the world, unknowing of both the horrors and the light of the Maker that will save him. The sound of metal sliding along leather comes from above him. From the second he was born to his soon-to-be dying breath, his mind was processing and analyzing knowledge and experiences. It is true that he thought he could be wise in his own eyes, but only the humble who recognizes that he knows very little. Bias, speculation, all the false pretenses make way to the sound of the sweeping steel, and then finally his soul, as ready as his eyes dry from this final understanding, enters his promise in its purest form. From the Death of Templar by Sir Andrew, Knight of Andraste and Temple Archivist, 9-4 Dragon. History of Kirkwall, Chapter 3. The Qunari first thundered into Kirkwall in 756 storm during the last of the new exalted marches. The collected nations of Thedas were attempting to drive the Qunari from the northern mainland once and for all. The Qunari armies were on the retreat, but in a desperate gambit their fleet encircled the Amaranthine coast and landed a great force near the marcher city of Ostwick. Their plans was to overwhelm the marcher cities of Starkhaven and Kirkwall. Starkhaven to block the road leading north, and Kirkwall to block ships on the waking sea from coming from Orlais, all in an effort to deny supplies to the Thedas armies assaulting Ravane. The attack on Starkhaven eventually failed, but Kirkwall was attacked in a daring night raid where the Qunari used their unleashed Cerebos mages in an unprecedented display of sorcery. So Cerebos mages, I feel like as a phrase, is kind of like ramen noodles, ATM machine, also chainmail. It's the Cerebos is the Kunari word for mage, so it's effectively saying mage. Um, the walls will turn down, and the city was taken. So city is unwalled? It seems like it has walls, but... And the next 4 years, Kirkwall endured the most brutal occupation in its history. Writings from that time are scarce. It was not until after the city was freed that the Kunari's deeds came to light. Children taken from their families, forced conversion to the Kunari religion, and brutal labor camps. It's ironic that the old slave quarters of Lowtown, still intact after centuries, provided perfect means for the Kunari to control the city's people. When the famous Orlesian chevalier, Sir Michel Lafay, rode into the city after finally defeating the Kunari defenders, he wrote, "Kirkwall is full of people with empty eyes that have had all independent thought driven from them." When Lafay was appointed the city's first viscount by the Emperor in 760 Storm, he made it his mission to undo the religious conditioning. The Lafay bloodline remained popular enough in the city that when the city finally rebelled against Orlesian rule in 805, Blessed Viscount remained the enduring title for Kirkwall's ruler despite its origin from Kirkwall, the city of chains by Brother Janativi in 924 Dragon. Thedas calendar. For most good folk, the details of our calendar have very little purpose. It is useful only for telling them when summer day festivals will be held, and when snows are expected to begin, and when the harvest must be complete. The naming of the years are a matter for historians and tacksmen, and few, if pressed, could even tell you the reason that our current age is named after dragons. It is 930 Dragon, the 30th year of the 9th age since the crowning of the Chantry's first divine. Each age is exactly 100 years. I don't believe time in the past was actually reckoned that way very often. More usually by, I think, by how many years the certain ruler had been on the throne, or maybe since the founding of a place. But with the next age, his name chosen in the 99th year, the scholars of Valroyo advise the Chantry of portents seen in the 99th year, and the Chantry authorities pour with the research for the months before the divine announces the name of the imminent age. The name is said to be an omen of what is to come, of what the people of Thedas will face. He's for the next 100 years. So I wonder why they didn't name any deer like, Plenty or Sweet Rolls or anything like that. The current age was not meant to be the Dragon Age. Throughout the last months of the Blessed Age, the Chantry was prepared to declare the Sun Age, named for the symbol of the Orlesian Empire, which at the time sprawled over much of southern Thedas and controlled both Ferelden and what is now Navarra. It was to be a celebration of Orlesian imperial glory. But that has nothing to do with the fact that Chantry is in Orlais. But as the rebellion in Ferelden reached a head and the Battle of Riverdane was about to begin, a peculiar event occurred, a rampage. The rising of the dreaded High Dragon. Dragons had been thought to be practically extinct since the days of the Navarran dragon hunts, and they say that to see this great beast rise form the Frostbacks was both majestic and terrifying. As the rampage began and the High Dragon decimated the countryside in its search for food, the elderly divine Faustine II abruptly declared the Dragon Age. Some say the divine was declaring support for Orlais in the battle against Ferelden, since the dragon is an element of the Dufeil family heraldry of King Megaren, the so-called usurper King of Ferelden. Be that as it may, the High Dragon's rampage turned towards Orlais, the Orlesian side of the Frostback Mountains, killing hundreds and sending thousands more fleeing to the northern coast. The Ferelden rebels won the Battle of Riverdane, ultimately securing their independence. Many thus think that the Dragon Age will come to represent a time of violent and dramatic change for all of Thedas. It remains to be seen. From the Studious Theologian by Brother Agenda TV, Chapter Scholar 925 Dragon. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be pretty peaceful. There won't be any big changes coming up in this age. Enigma of Kirkwall. It is as we thought. The quarries of Kirkwall were found after the city was sacked by the Imperium and after they started construction of the city. The Imperium found the mineral wealth, not the indigenous people. The histories give conflicting accounts on who lived here before the Imperium. Some say the Almari, some say the Defads. We know it was a barbarian people who had little need of the metals in the hills. That seems unlikely. A lot of barbarians did use metal, but... So why did the Imperium come here in such force? It is hard to disprove Brother Mikhail's theory that the natural harbour would be important for their armies, but the Magisters ruled, not common men. What barrier would a simple sea pose to them? The wars with the Almari wouldn't start until centuries later. Each clue we find only gives more questions, but we will not give up. Underneath the pile of small boulders carved with curious markings signed the Band of Three, in the back alley of Low Town you can find extraordinary things. Priceless tomes of knowledge can be bought with only a handful of gold. The Chant of Archon Loveus, the whole chapter of the Midnight Compendium. Some of these books were thought lost forever. And these are no forgeries. I've verified their authenticity myself. The fences have no inkling of what they're selling, that what they're selling has value. Where do these books come from? After several failed attempts, I got my answers underneath the city. There's a hive of hidden passages in Kirkwall sewers now, and then a lucky sewer rat will come across an unlooted chamber, and a cache of ancient Twinter relics spreads through the black market. We must search below the city. Underneath the cobblestone, with curious markings faintly glowing as a sign of the Band of Three. Master Mason made a comment that set my mind afire. She said that all the city policies that she's worked in Kirkwall was most difficult, and that the city is literally a maze. Yes, this is what happens when you have cities growing up with no city planning. Apparently it's kind of an interesting thing that like cities in Europe and like cities in at least in the United States, it's have slightly different setups. Like European cities like frequently might have like a city center that's based around like a Roman city, which was all grids. And then have a kind of sprawl, like small streets, winding streets, as the medieval people added to it in kind of a haphazard way, and then you get like more modern areas with going back to grids and also public transportation, with possibly an exception for cities that were largely destroyed in some of the wars. I don't recall exactly what sort of pattern cities in the United States go. I know there's... I get the impression there's like an early period in which... Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I think we're talking about like early period in which like based around streetcars or such like that, but don't remember exactly. But yeah, anyway, city being a maze, he's big perks. That seems like it'd be more likely to be the standard. Recollecting my first year in Kirkwall, I have to agree getting lost was commonplace. The city was a sprawling mess. The Mason showed me a plan of the city, and my heart skipped a beat. There were patterns in the intersections, back alleys, and boulevards. Some magisters believe that symbols of power are shapes. And the power of symbols or shapes. Those parts of the city, one can make out a line of glyphs in the very streets. What manner of magic is this? Underneath a cobblestone with curious marking the sign, the Band of Three. Yeah, that sounds like a sort of thing where the society that was ruled by mages is for many centuries might well do. Like, oh, we're setting up a new city, let's work magical glyphs and that such into it, because Tevinter seems like a society of magical excess. I mean, possibly not quite compared to what the apparently the Elven Empire was, but anyway. The Lomaern Accords. 50 years, that's how long it took the Imperium to drive out the Qunari occupation, but the rest of northern Thedas was not so lucky. Both divines, black and white, declared exalted marches, and for the only time since the schism of the Chantry they worked together. A centuries-long siege resulted, with the giant Qunari entrenched in Antivan, Rivain, and all of Thedas throwing armies against them. The war drained the resources of every nation in Thedas, leaving most on the brink of collapse. For the giants, it did not appear to be the damage to their armada or the losses of their soldiers, but the terrible toll upon the Rivaini population that prompted their retreat. When the third new exalted march had all but massacred the people of Kontar without even chipping the Qunari occupying force, the giants finally withdrew. The treaty that put an official end to the Qunari wars was signed on the politically neutral island of Lomaern, off the southern coast of Rivain. 150 years after their assault on the mainland began, the Qunari left our shores. They received the northern archipelago in exchange for a cessation of hostilities against all the nations on the accord. Only Tevinter refused to sign, and so the war continues to rage in the Imperium to the present day. It's worth noting, however, that the Kingdom of Rivain immediately violated the treaty twice. Once, when the humans of northern Rivain, nearly all practitioners of the Qun, and therefore by definition Qunari, refused to leave their homes and go into exile on the island. And again, when the Rivain Chantry and nationalist forces, unable to convert people back to the worship of the Maker, tried to purge by the sword, slaughtering countless unarmed people and burying them in mass graves. It's a fortunate mystery that the leaders of Kontar did not alert their allies in the northern passage, or we'd still be fighting giants now. From the Exalted Marches, an examination of Chantry warfare by Sister Petrine as Chantry scholar. Yeah, I'd been under the impression that they just did not practice burial or preservation of the dead. They practiced this cremation specifically because there's issues with demons possessing corpses. But admittedly, that doesn't really seem to stop the demons from coming into this world. Forbidden knowledge. Terun's Book of Blood was Daban Haight, one mage or full cabal. I found another reference to Zebin Kek in his black journal. The blood feeds, the blood nourishes, in the blood the call is heard, in the blood the deal is made. He'd my master bathed in a river of blood, then the great Zebin Kek came. Interesting. Characters. Anders after the Deep Roads. In the past 3 years, Anders has become more reclusive, verging on paranoid. Well, he's an outlaw mage. He's renegade from both the Chantry and the Grey Wardens, and neither of them like, well, in theory, neither of them like people leaving their ranks ever. When not with the champion, he spends his time among the Ferelden refugees in Dogtown, healing their ills and counting on their loyalty to protect him from curious Templars. After his friend Carl was made tranquil, then killed by Anders, Anders was convinced that the Chantry's entire structure must be overturned to free mages completely from their control. He has joined a group of like-minded apostates who are slowly wearing away Kirkwall's circle by helping other mages escape. The spirit of vengeance inside him has manifested more strongly, making it nearly impossible for him to control himself when fighting Templars. It's kind of interesting to the pairings they make for the spirits. Here it's like the flip side of justice is vengeance, and wisdom, pride. I'm not sure what the other ones are. Also kind of weird how they gloss over the fact that Anders is the one who killed Carl. Evelyn after the Deep Roads. Since the adventure in the Deep Roads, Evelyn has settled into life as a captain of the guard. She has removed the stain of Captain Jevon's corruption and turned the guardsmen into effective enforcers of law and order, becoming captain of the guard title should have brought Evelyn stability, but instead she found herself taxed by having so many people under her care. She is very protective of the people she commands, to the point of training each guardsman herself and personally reinforcing otherwise simple patrols. Injury rates are lower than ever before, but the guards are beginning to feel smothered. That's not the impression I got, but anyway. Evelyn is utterly dedicated to her job, leaving no time for anything beyond the occasional sidetrack with Marianne. Even that is an excuse to watch over people she cares about. She is a guardian in every waking moment. She doesn't seem to know how to put the weight down the weight she carries. Fenris after Deep Roads. Since the adventure in Deep Roads, Fenris has remained in Kirkwall, maintaining residence in Daenerys' abandoned mansion. As we note, it is not actually his mansion. That doesn't truly belong to him. Has aroused the interest of his curious neighbors, and thus the city guard. Evelyn so far has deflected inquiries on Fenris' behalf. However, she's told him in no uncertain terms that the situation will not remain that way forever. Though seemingly unconcerned about the house, Fenris has become increasingly nervous over the last year. He doesn't know if he's actually free of pursuit, or if his former master is planning something even worse. He tries not to think about it, taking pleasure in having a home for the first time in his life, even though his contact with anyone outside of the jobs he takes as a mercenary is very limited. Sebastian after the Deep Roads. He had nothing before the Deep Roads. Anyway, Sebastian has spent the past 3 years advancing his campaign to retake Starkhaven. He has been traveling extensively between Kirkwall and the other Freemarch cities, attempting to recruit sufficient allies to build an army, with Marion securing the Hawke family place among Kirkwall's nobility. The two have crossed paths a few times, but an exiled prince like Sebastian has far better access than Marion to the Viscount and other heads of state. So far, though, few families have agreed to support Sebastian with actual troops, leaving him in the difficult position of having to retake a city with no army. Nothing in letters and notes. Notes. Grey water letters. Alright, and that's it for this one. Thank you for watching. Do any relevant things with YouTube's buttons, and have a nice day.